I'm Nastasia Nicolau, and I'm with the Nocturnal. So,
Wow, you look gorgeous.
gorgeous!
I'm over here like Nastasia, like that's a great name.
I was so in awe of your performance throughout this entire series. I was so invested from Layla from the start. Like, I grew to love her. I grew to root for them and just everything that they really stood for, because gender and identity are topics that we just need to talk about and definitely put on screen. So thank
Mhm.
you for doing that, and especially during a time that the pandemic has hit and we need to talk about mental health. I guess what drew you in to this character and to this project when you first decided to sign on?
Wow. Okay, first off, like thank you. Like that's very like high praise. I appreciate it. Yeah, no, in the beginning, like when I'd first gotten the breakdown and I think it was just the sides and everything. To me, the character was so scary because it was just like the dialogue from the first episode. And I was like, is this the character? Like, is she telling the truth? And I was like, I don't know if like me being more, me just being non-binary and, if that's what I wanted to tell. But then it turned into, no, of course there's more, it's like she's putting on like a front. She's kind of like making a mockery out of therapy itself and just like not really trusting of the environment. And so of course there was like more to the character, and it was really beautiful kind of like unraveling those things and discovering more, and it felt like it never stopped, like right up until the end. So yeah, it was nerve-wracking.
I'm sure it was such heavy dialogue that you guys really had to put on display, and there's no hiding because it is just
Mm,
so intimate throughout the entire process. But the one thing that I'll say is, like, you really realize different things about her every episode, and she really does like pull back these layers to her, and she's such a full character.
mm,
And that's something that we don't always see when we talk about these topics like on woke Twitter,
mm,
but to put a person and a face and a storyline with these topics is so important. You being non-binary, what was it like for you to play a character who is struggling with this topic of love, but with Kara, and how she feels like she doesn't trust Dr. Brooke Taylor to let her in on all of her feelings?
mhm.
How did your own experiences maybe play into that?
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so it's really interesting because like as a non-binary person, there was like, I mean, as long as I can remember, like since being a kid, like being queer, and then realizing, oh, people come out, so like, oh, when does that process have to happen for me, and how do I do it? And of course it'll be terrible, right? And so there was kind of like that period, and yeah, and then realizing like, oh, I can just like subtly do it, and I was like in a safe enough space to be like, oh, so I'm queer. And then when it got to like college, it was like, so can I tell people that like I'm more mask and like I feel trans? And like then that turned into like, I mean, of course, like we can all understand it, but like more of like a safety issue. And then so how will those conversations go like down with people who maybe I'm, interested in, um or like friends, and like will they accept me being queer and will they not accept me being trans, which was like really fascinating because it like that is a very interesting experience. But I think for me that really connected to Layla, because Layla is just like so distrusting of people generally, and like specifically to adults, because she's been confined in this environment which is um, not understanding like queer identity, not understanding, yeah, like anything of that kind of sort. And I think that kind of leads her to be like, more more isolated, especially like mentally and like emotionally, and being so distant with her grandmother and with her own father, is like really fascinating. So when Layla gets to this situation of having to open up herself and be obligated to open up herself and discuss things way deeper than how she feels that day,
Yeah.
is that's a process. And that kind of the same energy that she has towards her family is, I mean, if not more, with how she interacts with Dr. Taylor. I don't know this woman. I don't know how she's going to react. Is she even like specialized to be able to talk about LGBTQIA plus topics? Like, do we agree politically? Like, there's so many different things that can just lead her to be like, no, I'm just going to make a mockery of this, because like, what is it actually going to do?
Yeah, and she has such interesting theories about like love, and talks about
Mm,
like, and I think it stems from her relationship with her dad, and
mm,
stems from her relationship with her grandmother. Do you
mm.
think Kara is almost like an outlet for her to like discover her like true feelings maybe for the first time?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, for the longest time, I debated whether Kara was real or not.
Yeah.
I was like, really? But she is, she is. But yeah, I think with Kara, it was the first experience where a person saw like Layla like as herself, like. And when somebody like sees you, it's almost like, you're transparent. When they see you, it's like you never want to lose that person, and you never want to like be distant, because it's the only person who's like been able to like yeah, just like see you in a way. And I think when she met Kara, it was like, I never want you to leave my life. And I think she's trying to do anything to kind of like keep that alive in a way. Yeah,
And
in a way. Yeah.
and she's almost protective of it. When her therapist Dr. Brooke starts to ask her about it, she almost like is protective of this thing, like defensive, like, why are you trying to take this from me or discredit the feelings that I do have, when in reality she's not trying to do that at all. But I want to know, like, what was it like working with Uzo in those intimate scenes where feelings are getting
Mm.
big and small, and you're just on a roller coaster almost with this character? What was it like working with her through that?
It was insane because like Uzo is like an incredible actor. So like each time we were working together, it just felt like a master class, So like I knew that this woman like not only had my back, but like she was going to like also like push me throughout the scene. Like, she wasn't going to just like sit back and just say lines and like, let me do the actor thing. She was going to be engaging and like be right there with me. If not like coax me into like, okay, like I sense it's going this way, like go ahead.
Yeah.
like how does that make
Yeah.
you feel? And so yeah, I mean, she was phenomenal. It was it was just like safe in a way.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. And I know that they wanted to kind of play homage to the original, and there's some Easter eggs in there. Did you go back and watch any of the original episodes to kind of understand what In Treatment was? Or were you like, no, I got to just do it my own way?
It was a little bit of both, honestly. I didn't want to copy the things and the ideas that people had done in the past, because I feel like each person, I mean, therapy is unique to every single person. So it's like some people have like different antics or different, you know, ways of experiencing therapy. And I didn't want to like copy that or anything, but I did look back because there's so many like fantastic actors who have been a part of this series. And there were some, like in particular, I'm a really big fan of Dane Dehan, and I was really interested by his character. And I was like, okay, so entrances to, therapy. And I was like, how did he walk in? And his entrance was like so fascinating to me. So I just watched that and I was like, okay, now I know how to enter. So then,
Yeah.
yeah, but it was like a give and take of both, honestly. I wanted to make it fresh and to make it unique, but to also just like see how people did particular things.
I love how Layla says at one point that they're not doing it right. They're that she feels like she isn't doing therapy correctly, or is therapy the right way. And Dr. Brooke is like, this is it. This is therapy. Like, this is how we are. And I thought that was so interesting, just looking at it from an outside perspective. When you were trying to get through these lines and having to make meaning out of this script, and it's such an intimate setting, how did you prepare for those emotions, and how did you prepare for some of these more grappling higher concepts with the lines? Like, there was a lot in there, you know?
Yeah. For me, like I've seen like my own personal therapist for like maybe about 2 years. And so when I had in treatment, I was like so excited to be like, okay, cool, like so and so, like here's what I'm doing. And then so we kind of worked on that too, and like recalling, like there was specific things in the script that for me were like a little bit triggering. And so like, and it was those very like existential like ideas.
Mhm.
And when I would discuss it with my own like personal therapist, like she'd be like, well, maybe you're thinking about it this way, like we've already done the work to like, you know, relieve past trauma, and this is someone who's actively going through it. And so like maybe enter it from like a very like, you know, like I'm trying to figure out like, you know, like I'm in a
Yeah,
in a
Layla,
way like,
it's almost like Layla isn't at the same steps that you probably
oh yeah.
are in your life, because you've gone through therapy. I've done therapy, whereas somebody who maybe hasn't done it before is kind of still
Oh
questioning.
yeah. And that's okay, perfect. Because I think like that's the interesting thing within treatment, because it shows therapy as a process, and it
Yeah.
shows it as a very like authentic process. And I think it's interesting because like when you hear the word, you're like, okay, so this person talks and then you cry, and then there aren't days where you're just talking. You know, there aren't days where, you know, you're not upset. You know, like therapy is a very you get like whatever like you give in it. And
Mm.
I think that was like interesting too, because it's like, hmm, yeah, yeah. I completely forgot where I was going with it, but
No, I get that. I mean, these are big topics, and there's a lot that goes into these characters. That's why I'm just sitting here like, wow, when I was watching it, I'm like, they're really going there with their
mm,
feelings and emotions on screen. I want to see what happens with Layla, though. Are we gonna get to see more from Layla in more episodes? Like, I'm asking everyone, I'm like, you can't leave us hanging. I'm like, I'm very invested at this point.
no, but that's what you want. Like you want her to be good, right? Like
Yeah, of
that
course.
is it. But I feel you. It was the same for me. Like when we got to the last episode, I was like, but like what happens, you know? Like, and that's like the really beautiful thing, because it's just, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. But they did a good job.
Where would you like to see Layla if there was more episodes to come? What would you like to see from your character?
Checking in periodically with you know Dr. Taylor, and just like keeping a correspondence that's not as like intense as going to therapy, you know, as much as she was and as rigorously as she was, but rather like being connected to this person that Layla knows that she can trust through like anything and like everything that she goes through. That's like where I would love to see her. Just like, how you doing? Good. Okay, cool. Bye.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for speaking with me and taking the time to talk with me. I
Yeah.
really love this show. Congratulations on how successful it's going to be.
Mhm.
I thank you for just putting a character on screen that we can all relate to, and it represents mental health and, you know, people of color and just everything that this show entails with gender and identity.